This is Liz Powell representing PCA families in one of our recordings designed to capture lived experience and best practiced evidence-based learning that assists kinship, permanent and adoptive parents and carers in supporting young people. We are a child-safe organisation. Being able to learn from peers and connect with those who may help us is particularly important. Today, we are discussing the lived experience of a child in care. Before we do, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land with which we meet. We pay respects to elders past and present and express our intention to move together to a place of justice and partnership. Today, I'm joined by Maggie. Maggie is in her 20s. She's a student studying nursing and has spent the past few years working in aged care. Maggie spent most of her later primary and secondary school years navigating the system, including time in long-term care with a family and time spent in residential care and with the Lighthouse Foundation. Maggie has always maintained connection with her biological family, including 6 siblings and her parents. Her family originated from Burundi, Africa, and came to Australia in 2005. Hi, Maggie. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey to Australia from Africa all those years ago and how you ended up in the system?
So it's been a while now, actually. So we came in Australia, as you said, in 2005. I was I think I was 8 years of age, yes. I don't really remember much about back home. But I remember when we arrived in Australia, I was part of my family, like I was with them for, I believe, 1 or 2 years before we were put into the system. So it's quite vague right now because it's been a long time. So I remember, I think I was at school. Then when we came back home, we found some social workers at home. I think the neighbors had rang them just to notify there had been issues at home and that there were underage children at home. So yeah, when we arrived, there were social workers there and they pretty much explained to us that the neighbors had rang them, notified them that there was a bit of issues at home due to the noise complaints during the nights. My parents used to drink a lot, and when they did drink, they would become a bit loud and violent. Only on my dad's side, actually. My mum was a bit more reserved and quiet. And so once they explained that to us, they also explained to my parents that because there were underage children in the home, that by law that we couldn't really stay there because it was unsafe. So I and my younger sister and my brother and my other sister, pretty much all of us were actually taken that day, but my 2 older sisters were over age of 18, actually one of them, so they didn't really have to be in the system. So, but because it was unsafe for us to stay there, the Department of Human Services did provide us a accommodation for that night, just until before we went to court. So we stayed in like a motel for like 3 days, I believe. And then from there, they scheduled a court date. And when we went to court, obviously my younger sister and my brother, there's 6 of us. So my sister and my younger brother, we were pretty young, so obviously we couldn't stay in the house. So then when they scheduled a court date, when we went to court, then they decided that it was unsafe for us. So then from there, we were then put into the system, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of change. It sounds like you're around about 9, 10, something like that when that happened. Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember what it felt like when you had to enter a stranger's home at that age?
It was pretty scary on my end because I've always wanted to be just part of my family. I've just always had that connection with my biological family. So on my end of things, it was kind of challenging because, like, we also had to get used to the cultural differences. I can imagine back then our English wasn't as great too. So when it comes to asking for things or expressing ourselves, wasn't as the way we wanted to. So it was kind of frustrating because as it was kind of also confusing of what was happening, because like I had spent all my time with my mum and dad, and then we come to Australia, whereas everything else is still new. I'm still learning how, the culture of Australia is, and then I'm taken away. It was kind of strange at the first, but the few days where we were in care, foster care, I was with my sister and my brother, so at least we had that person we can connect to and speak to. So yeah, it was quite, apart from being taken away, it felt a bit strange, but having that family connection with me still also helped. It was kind of challenging at first.
Yeah, you're talking about having your family with you, which I'm sure was really helpful. Was there anything else that you found was really helped you when you were settling in? Anything else that you could say was something that was really, something to encourage other people to do when people settle in like that?
Yeah, sure. Like I felt like the first few foster parents we had, they did try all their best to try, and though we were taken away and we weren't really at home, like not taken away, but we went with our family, some of them did try and make sure that we were still connected to our roots in a way. Like they would take us to like African drumming and all that. Just they will try and get us to still be connected with our cultural stuff. So those are things that also did really help me. And also just being so understanding and caring. And yeah, those are things that I felt like also assisted me while I was still in the first few days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you find, as residential care? You sort of went between the two. Well, how did the residential care happen for you?
Oh, residential care was kind of, it was very difficult time. So I remember I'm not sure if you spoke to Sonia and you noticed that she did also look after me.
Yes.
So before we went to live with Sonia, we were actually living in residential care with me and my sister and my brother. But I think our social worker just realized that residential living wasn't so beneficial on our side of things, like because we were living with other children who are a bit very difficult to live with. So when they found us Sonia's home, we moved back with them. But as a teenager, I was a bit difficult to deal with. And so I then was put back into a residential home. So that's how went by me going from foster caring to residential home. Is just, I really felt, I wasn't really happy at that moment. Was dealing with the law, and I also didn't know how to communicate or express what I was going through. As a teenager, I was quite angry. So, and also living with Sonia's families and young children of hers, it was kind of, I don't think she really wanted that type of influence with her kids growing up. So I also felt bad that, I felt like I was too much. So I then spoke to my youth worker and I said, look, I'm not happy here. So then they took me back to residential living, only because they couldn't find another home for me at that time. So that's how I went from stable home, like foster home, to then back to a residential living.
And you've touched on something that is very, very common, and a lot of children in your situation now would be experiencing, and that's the anger and those sorts of things that happen, and the blow-ups at home that can happen around the triggers and things like that. Was that something that used to happen at home and that you used to find you couldn't control that well?
No, I think it's not because I was pretty much exposed to it back home and that's why I was feeling that way. I think it's because I really felt like I wasn't being understood from the Department of Human Services part of things, like my youth worker, social worker, and then where I was living as well at that time. I felt like I wasn't being heard.
Yeah.
So in a way for me to express my anger or express how I felt, then I took my anger and frustration out at them. And most of the time, as a teenager, I remember I didn't really communicate. Like I would just let things bulk up in me. Like I was very upset and hurt because I also didn't really understand a lot of things to which what was happening around me. And so, I think it was more me personally, like I didn't know how to sit down and have a conversation to my foster parents and be like, this is what's happening. I'm feeling like this and this. I did do it time to time, but it wasn't like a regular thing. I was just very disconnected and I would just isolate myself quite a bit. And so that's what I think led to me just being gone back to residential home, because I didn't know how to manage my feelings or emotions, or I didn't know how to just communicate and tell my foster parents, hey, I'm feeling like this and this, I need help. I just never asked for help.
Yeah, and you're highlighting something that's very important, and that's that the child's voice is heard in all of this. That's the most important voice, and yeah, that is something that happens quite regularly. Absolutely. And I'm wondering about that child's voice. How was that at school? Did you have problems at school at all? Did you feel that people understood you at the school system?
When I was in high school, yes, I did build quite strong friendships while I was there and in foster care. I did feel like one or two of my friends did have my back, and they were there for me whenever I needed. And I even still have one of my friends, and I'm still in contact with them till today. And so yeah, having that friendships at high school and primary school were also very helpful in the way of me maintaining my emotions. And yeah, so I'll say yes, it did help.
Good. And what about you? We were talking a lot about those emotions, and it's very easy to internalize those, which is what you're articulating. Were you ever offered any psychological support or any sort of support from anyone at all? Yeah.
Yes. When I moved to the Lighthouse Foundation, I did get offered a psychologist who I saw every 2 weeks on a Tuesday. It was one of the rules that Lighthouse has if you're living under the company. So yeah, that was quite good. But being the stubborn myself, I also rejected that a couple of times. But yeah, it did help in the long run. Yeah, it was quite good.
Yeah, and that once again, that's something that happens in those teenage years. Yeah, it can happen for sure. And there's other foundations and things out there like Create, those sorts of ones. Did you ever have any links with those? Yep.
Yes, I was with Create actually. I did go to a few of their programs. So they ran like art programs, dance programs. They just had a lot of social programs that they ran that I was also a part of. Yeah, I was part of Create. They were good.
Yeah. So what would you say to other children, sort of teenagers in your situation now? What would you say is some of the things that would be really helpful for them or for their carers to make sure that they're giving them as much as we can?
Yeah, sure. Just learning to communicate, I guess, and accepting or realize, just not accepting, but to think that there's someone there for you, even though at that time your parents are not there with you physically. Just knowing that you're having that support from another family who also still loves you and care for you like your parents. And so not to isolate yourself, but just receive help as well. And yeah.
Yeah, you're highlighting something there, which is very important, I think, for teenagers to hear, is that to be open to receive the help. Because you've highlighted that sometimes you didn't want it, and it's totally understandable. That's the teenage way, but sometimes it's really helpful, for sure.
Yeah.
And what about now? Do you find that you need supports at times that things trigger for you? Now, or do you feel that you are able to articulate what's going on for you at times?
Well, yeah, I've learned over the years to communicate, just because, work-wise and also in my personal life. So I do find, not even just to communication, I feel like I did learn a lot growing up with being in the foster care system, because I've learned to be a stronger person in a way, because I did go through quite a bit during my youth, and so like I did learn quite a bit from my foster parents and also those who looked after me during the residential years. Just not just communication, but there's a lot of other skills that I did take away from just being in the system or being looked after by someone else, not just my parents, but like those who looked after me while I was in foster care, or those who looked after me when I was in residential, or the Lighthouse Foundation. So yeah.
It sounds like there was so many changes for you, Maggie, during that time. I'm wondering whether there's anything else that you could say that would, with all those frequent changes, and as you highlighted, residential care and being in residential care, some of those influences that were there were luckily seen not as helpful. But is there anything you can say about for going into families with other children there as well. As you said, there was already siblings there, and there was you going in as well. Anything that you could say to families about how they could help those siblings to understand what's going on for you?
Well, I think they did do their best when coming to explain to their children, because when, for example, one of the families that I was with, the kids were quite young. And so like they were at that age where they're like, they don't really understand things, but because they're just young and innocent, they took us in like their older sisters. And so I think just explaining to the kids, they're here for this and this and this reason, not like telling them everything that's happened, but making sure they understand that there will be days where the two girls that you're living with, they'll be grumpy in a way, or they'll feel like they'll have a bad day. So they're not feeling like, oh, the kids that are coming to live with us are like, they're like the worst, or the type of, or the damage, or that sort of thing. But understanding that the parents should try and just explain to the children that, not explain, but show to them that even though they are fostered kids, we are going to also still love them and care for them like you guys. That way the kids don't also, us, the fostered children, don't feel like we're being intruding in a way, like we're just living with them. So yeah, I think that's what I would say, I guess. So they don't feel like we're intruders, so we're not just there and they don't understand why we're there.
Sounds, Maggie, like you've done a lot of fantastic work, and that life's doing quite well for you now. How are you doing now? What's happening for you now?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. So I'm studying the Bachelor's of Nursing, and as well working as a disability support worker. I was working in aged care for 3 years, but I thought I would change the path during the COVID. So yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing all those great insights, which I'm sure is going to be helpful for a lot of people going forward. And to anyone making the time to listen to this recording, thank you for giving up your valuable time to benefit the young people in your lives. If you are a permanent or adoptive parent needing help or support, please contact PCA Families at info@pcafamilies.org.au or call us on 03 9020 1833. Please subscribe, follow, or leave a review, or share an idea for a future topic. Until next time, have an amazing week.
Thank you.